Hi, welcome to my video. In this video, I'm going to explain to you the definition of big data and the benefits of big data, types of data, and the associated frameworks for the big data. What is big data? And everybody is talking about big data. So, the big data is a field dedicated to the analysis, processing, and storage of large collections of data that frequently originate from disparate sources. You might get the data from social media, you might get the data from daily transactions of your finance or any other transactions that you do. You might get your bills, electricity bills, grocery bills, medicine, whatnot. So the volume represents, huge amounts of data in terabytes and petabytes and so on. If somebody has a data which is in megabytes or gigabytes, it's not really worth exploring big data because big data is ideally suited for very large data in terms of the size. The other V of the big data represents velocity. A velocity is a variation of data flow into the enterprise with respect to the time. So this is pretty easy to understand. So at times you get huge volumes of data flowing in to your enterprise or your network, especially for example during the Christmas time or New Year time, people sending large amounts of people exchanging large amounts of multimedia content over the SMS or via the social media. So you get large amount of data flowing at that particular time, and then in some other time you're not going to get the same amount of data, but you're going to get a little less of it, and this keeps varying. So big data addresses these problems as well, and big data is suitable for this kind of situation. Other V represents variety. Variety represents the type of data is considered as part of the big data. It's like it could be simple text, or it could be video, it could be audio, or it could be images, etc. And the next V represents veracity. Veracity actually means that the quality of the data. So you have to deal with the type of data that is meant to be collected to be analyzed as part of the big data analysis. So to do that, you have to reduce the noise and basically eliminating the invalid data, eliminating the junk data that's not going to be part of the big data storage. And then the value represents how useful is your data. For example, almost livestock value quote, for example, if somebody wants it in a 1 day interval or 1 hour interval or 1 minute or 10 seconds, which is useful to make some value out of the data that is getting stored. So in short, to summarize it, the big data is actually meant for dedicated for large data that is coming at various speeds in various forms, and then it it actually has to have a quality data to make some usefulness out of it, and this has to be analyzed, processed, and stored. So that comprises the big data definition. And let's see what are all the types of big data. Big data is ideally segregated into three different categories. One is a structured, for example, largely produced by your ERP and CRM applications in the large enterprise. It's predominantly in SQL format or some other standard format that the systems can understand. So the other category is the unstructured, where the data is not uniformly exchanged. For example, videos getting shared in social networking sites between one to the other, and people tweet and people send messages. People also send voice messages these days. Example from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. People exchange the message multiple times over the period of time. So what's happening in the background is that you gather all the unstructured data between multiple parties being exchanged to do some analysis, what people are talking about, what kind of videos people are trying to share in in a way that you can make some value out of it. The other kind of data that is part of the type is semi-structured. Semi-structured is partly structured but partly unstructured. What it means, and for example, the web services data in JSON and GPS data in XML, etc., are the best examples for semi-structured, wherein you have some standard protocols to exchange the data, but then sometimes the data can be in free flow format. I mean, you don't have to have the exact data format being agreed between source and destination before it's being exchanged, because it's actually plain text. When the sender sends it, the destination can also just extract the text data. It's predominantly like a text data or an XML data in the GPS format, etc. So these are the three primary types of big data. And what are the benefits of big data? The benefits, it can be looked into multiple ways. Organizations doing an analytics on employees' preferred way of communication, and you know, and then organization can invest more on that to develop it further, to work on the strengths, and also avoiding a single decision maker in terms of operational optimization for any organization. That leads to actionable intelligence. You can take some action according to the intelligence found by the big data analysis. Often it opens up a new window for new markets for the organization to explore and expand the business. And another reason is to do the accurate predictions, because the sampling that you do at a very large scale is being reduced to very small. So when you do a large number of sampling to arrive at a conclusion, the more the sample is, the prediction is better. So the big data often leads to accurate predictions. And another big advantage for big data is fault and fraud detection. So this is mainly if you are dealing with security data, security transactions, often in the bank or insurance or any other financial transaction, trading. So they arrive at the decision by looking at the patterns in the way the transaction has occurred. So this will give the financial institutions a major advantage to detect what is faulty and what is a fraud, transaction. And also, big data often produce more detailed records rather than sampling at very very large set of data. You do the sampling at a very large set of data, but you do it with a small chunks and then aggregate them to have a very accurate decision. So this also improves the decision making process rather than going ahead with one person decision in the organization. The decision becomes data driven when you use big data analysis for any business operations or business intelligence in the organizations. And there's also another interesting fact about big data analysis is the scientific discoveries. And if you look at the latest genetic analysis, or it could be a tsunami predictions in based on sea waves and in the seashore, or based on some data that it actually generates. It often leads to new scientific discoveries of patterns or models that is new. So there are much more to talk about the benefits of big data. These are just at a high level to give you a overview of what it can do when you use the big data. All right. So let's take a close look at what is data analysis in big data context. Data analysis is the process of examining data to find facts, relationship, patterns, insights, and trends. This will enable better decision making, as we talked in earlier slide. Example: the ice cream storage or coffee shop analysis according to weather conditions. So there are coffee shops who does analysis on the weather, and accordingly they predict that the number of coffees that they're going to need for supply. They can predict in advance based on the projected or predicted weather conditions. So that is one of the simple example. And the other is opposite. If you have an ice cream storage where you relate to the climate or the weather condition, if it is like winter, it's not going to sell much. If it is like summer, you predict that it's going to be selling more. So the inventory is analyzed based on the weather condition to meet the supply and demand in this kind of business. So that is how the data analysis is useful in big data context. Okay, another big question is big data technology a revolutionary or evolutionary? Guess the answer, because if you look at the large banks, they have been existing for more than many decades, and they have been able to run the business by dealing with large sets of data. So the conclusion here is that big data is not a revolutionary, it is an evolutionary technology. The banks have been using mainframes and other big databases to deal with large sets of data and very powerful computing infrastructure to do that. What big data has enabled is analyzing that, storing it, and making the business intelligence out of it. The whole process made much more easier than previous times. What are the reasons for it? Why big data now? And what made that possible? So there are multiple reasons. Let's look at one by one. First of all, the technology has evolved. Open source framework has contributed a significant transformation. So Hadoop is the best example how big data has been, transformed to every organization, every business to do the big data analysis on their own. So the technology played a major contribution to make that happen. Another reason is commodity hardware. Earlier times, when we talk about the banks having large sets of mainframe computers to deal with the big data, the hardware was very expensive, and often it is tied to a specific partner or vendor, specific company. Now the hardware has become commodity. I mean, you buy the hardware off the shelf from the market anywhere, and you just plug it into your network, or you just plug it into your big data ecosystem, and it's going to be good enough to go. So that's one of the other reason. The third important reason is the storage. Storage is becoming cheaper and cheaper every day. I remember when I bought my 500 GB external hard drive for about $300 about 6 years ago. Now the same for the same amount, $300, if you want to invest in storage, you probably get about 1 terabyte capacity. So you can actually see the trend, the way it is coming cheaper and cheaper day by day. So that has been a big boon for big data, because every organization or every business can afford a very large storage for themselves and then store every data in their data center in their control, and then they can take it back for analysis at the time that they need. So that has been another big reason for why big data is being pushed now. The last, but it's not the least one, the data generation is very high compared to earlier times. Like, I remember 10 years back when I was just having a mobile phone, and all I could do with that mobile phone is just make calls and receive calls, and I could send exactly 160 characters of SMS and receive SMS. I was not having the facility to do video. I was not facility to having send any MMS as a message to other party. So that was when I'm talking about the GSM just 2G or 2.5G. So that was 10 years ago. If you look at just after 5 years, the video has become big. The internet has opened up for everyone around the world. So there are social networking sites where people upload lots and lots of videos and pictures every day, and there are people who just text in tweets and Facebooks and LinkedIn to share information. So this is generating a huge volume of data each and every day in an unpredictable manner from every part of the world. So now the business is facing, the consumer market intelligence business is facing challenge to understand what are the topic the users are interested, what they are discussing in a day to day. For example, a small beauty product is trying to understand what the end users are talking about in Facebook about beauty products. And they want to learn this customer behavior. They want to learn what is there in customers' mind from their data that they exchange in the social media websites. So that is where the big data has been, that it's been contributing to for the organizations to easily derive those intelligence from the data that the user has been sharing. Not just in social media, there could be many other forms. That is, social media is just an example, because every day everyone uses it. So let's see what is data analytics. So the data analytics includes the management of the complete data lifecycle, right? First, you collect the data, means you collect the data from any source that is generating a data. You cleanse the data. The cleansing is, eliminating the redundant data or avoiding the repeated data, repeated and removing any junk data. And then it has to be organized in a way that can be stored for later retrieval at a reasonable speed. So this is nothing but, when you organize your data, you want to put all the videos, or based on the data type that's been exchanged, or from the region, you want to put all the data into one particular place, one particular place where you can retrieve it based on those regions. And then you got to you organize the data, and then you have to store it. So the storage, where do you want to store it and how you store it? You have to plan it, whether it's a distributed storage system you want to have it, you want to have caching, all such things you design. And then you have to analyze. The analyzing part that we already talked about it has, processed, and then it has to be analyzed and then stored. Yeah. And then governing the data. So the governing the data is nothing but you have to make sure that the data is being properly governed, in a sense that it is maintained in a way that can grow, and in the future as well, we can derive the intelligence that we want. So that's nothing but the governing the data. So that is all part of the data analytics, and then there could be multiple types of data analytics. Uh, there are people who talk about so many types of analytics, but if you see it from the the way data has been looked into it, one is a descriptive analytics, the other is a diagnostic, and the predictive analysis and prescriptive analytics. So each one has its own reason for it. So when you want to do your data analytics, you have to be really clear with what you want to do with the analytics. So based on your outcome, you are going to go with one of these four data analytics type. And with that, for this video, I am going to wind it up, and I'm coming back soon with the next video where we will talk about each of these analytics in little bit detail and then see what is the use of it. And thanks for listening, and if you like my video, please subscribe to this channel. Thanks again. Bye.